All right, Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. We're going to do an analysis here from 3x Velocity Camp with Justin. Okay, coming out of leg lift. Good movement as far as starting momentum, staying closed with the lift leg, glove side. A little bit of, I would say a little ipsilateral, leaning over the feet. Not too bad. I think it's doable. Maybe a little bit, you could bring it back a little bit more to a vertical, closer to vertical trunk, Justin. I would say looks like the hip rotation, we're already in rotation at this point. Maybe that's what's causing something looks different with the trunk orientation. But if we look at the pelvis orientation here, we can see the pelvis is 11 degrees open. Actually, let's see, it's oriented differently. So if that's, say, a closed orientation, actually that's more of a closed, or that's a counter rotated. That'd be the closed orientation. So coming into leg lift, there is some good counter rotation, but coming out of leg lift, it looks like it's quick to rotate. So it's starting to open pretty quickly. If we go to tools here, we'll be able to see a little visual representation of that. See here, the hips are closed, counter rotated, and then quickly opening to where even before leg drive, you can see the hips are starting to swivel open. So could be just the fact that the femur is not in external rotation, enough external rotation on the drive leg. So what we call holding torsion. Definitely need to work on that and sit into that back hip and try to hold it back into counter rotation, because you can see when the front leg starts to get out, back knee is going down really quick, and hips are really starting to fly open. So at front foot strike, it does put the hips in a fairly open position, but because it's just mostly rotational, as you can see that back heel, the drive heel is just kind of popping up. It's not driving a lot of force behind the hip. So if we go to the kinematic sequencing, which is going to be how it's sequencing angularly, you can see the hips started to peak right here, the red line. The hips started to peak right here, and then they kind of stalled a little bit, and then they peaked up when the front foot landed. So early rotation will do that, where the hips will start to rotate and then they'll stop. They'll kind of plateau, and then the front foot will land, and then the hips will pick up in speed. So we're trying to get more force behind that because we want these hips really driving rotation. So about at this point right here, you'd want the hip to be at full peak. So where the dot is on the red, that it needs to be there, and it needs to be at that level. You can see because of that, the glove, the dark blue, is starting to start quickly after that. So what happens is the hips start rotation, and then the glove takes over to help power rotation. Ideally, we'd want to see the glove with the green dot, or with the green peak, because that's the trunk. We want to see those going together. So the glove's having to help take over and help out. And then the trunk peaks, and then here the arm peaks. Okay, so you do see a bit of the kinematic sequencing. So here we should see the red dot, which it's a little later because the hips peak higher after front foot strike. Would want to see it peaking here, and then we'd want to see the blue and green here, and then we'd see the yellow there, and that'd be perfect kinematic sequence. You know, there's a good base here to work with, but we need to just try to clean that up to make those improvements. If we look at it at linear, so that was rotational, we want to see how it moves forward. Okay, we see a big glove side, or the dark blue, movement forward. So there's a lot of energy in the glove side throwing it forward. You can see here as the hands break, really throwing the glove side out forward is helping to try to pull the body down the mound. Ideally, we don't want to see that. We want to see the hip doing it. And then you can see when the trunk goes forward right here, when it peaks towards the target, the hips are peaking just after it. So that's a reverse sequence. We'd want the same thing with the angular. We want to see the hip, get the red peaking first, and then we'd see the green. So a lot of upper body energy directing the trunk energy going forward. We want to see it following the lower half energy, which we're not. We're almost seeing the lower half energy following the upper half energy. So I need to work on it in the linear aspect too. Like, it's not enough just to sequence correctly in rotation. We want to sequence correctly towards the target in our linear power. So at this point here, you can see at front foot strike, because of that, the chin, or the it's hard to see the chin, but the just look at like the middle of the neck is getting in front of the hips. That's because that upper body energy worked early to create the forward movement. So now we have a little forward trunk going into front foot strike because the back leg just kind of turned over. The arm's really cocking aggressively inside 90. That can work against keeping the arm delayed. The arm can go early because of that, and it looks like it does. So as we come out of rotation, the arm is following the trunk well, but it's quickly going into release, which I typically find a lot of over inside 90 pitchers, their arm wants to go very early, and in this case you can see that. So when it does go, if you look at the trunk orientation, the forward position's 30 degrees of the trunk. In an elite pitcher, you're going to see 45, 50 degrees of the trunk. And then you're also going to see the front leg extending as well. Excuse me. Okay, so kind of going back to the drawing board here, we need to delay the femur rotation, the back leg femur rotation. Excuse me. Sneeze attack. And we need to get more linear power out of the back leg going into front foot strike. And if the linear power through the back leg, back hip, ultimately that will pull the trunk back, and then we'll get less forward trunk tilt at front foot strike. We need to work on having a more relaxed, flexed arm position, not so aggressive inside 90. That won't force the arm to want to jump and get extended early. Then we can get into more even trunk extension and carry the trunk more forward into more forward trunk tilt into pitch release. I think there wasn't too much rotational energy in the trunk. If we look at the pelvis orientation at release as far as lateral, I guess I'd say it was wrong. It did. It went to 32 degrees. 25 to the contralateral side to glove side is max. 32 is pretty aggressive. So there was, because of the lack of linear power towards the target, the trunk is pulling off more in rotation to release to a point where it starts to get hard on the arm. Okay, and then the front leg could even get more extension. So there's a lot here. I really work on delaying the back leg from going early, trying to get more extension and drive and power, momentum towards the target, and get that to bring the trunk back and transfer later in the movement, and with even putting the arm in a more flexed position to create even a later arm. A lot more energy is going to come up, and we're going to see a big jump in velocity.